Well, I'd like to welcome you all to another episode of Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. Today we got a great interview lined up. I have a great guest lined up. I've had my guest on here before, Mr. Dan Willis, and we are talking about prepping and doing a lot of great stuff with the prepping area. And I knew I had to get him on to talk about something a lot more that a lot of other people are talking about, and something that he talks about a lot. So I definitely want to go ahead and just go ahead and give you a little information about Dan. Just to let you guys know, he's a former U.S. Navy top secret military witness, and that he testified in 2001 along with 20 other military and intelligent witnesses in Washington, D.C., about the ET presence and the illegal secret government operations. What's really interesting, too, is that he also had the backing of 500 military intelligence witnesses with him to basically talk about this and collaborate it and all that great stuff. And I thought he would be great to get on here and talk about a topic I love, which is our hidden history and our hijacked planet. So I thought, let's get Dan Willis on here, and we're going to go ahead and introduce him here now. Hello, Dan. How are you? Thank you for being here.
Rick, pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, it's always great to have you here. I was just telling people at the intro that I had you on here. We were talking about prepping and all of that great stuff, off-grid living. And then I knew I had to get you on here to talk about this because I know on your website, thewebmatrix.net, you have a timeline that goes through our hidden history and our hijacked planet. And I really would love you to, I asked you to come on here and bring up this timeline and talk us through it and just tell everybody about this and get us all up to date, what's going on, all that great stuff.
Yeah, it's the other hat I wear.
For sure, right.
Um, yeah, I got interested in this subject when I had a top secret security clearance in naval communications in 1969. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Right.
I was getting reports from ships reporting discs coming out of the oceans, going to secret classified reports, going to Chief of Naval Operations. So I knew there was something real about this. And so, I searched over the years, and in 2001, over 20 years ago, almost 21 years now, it was May 9th, 2001. 20 of us went before the mainstream media of the world. At the time, I didn't even know what Operation Mockingbird was. I thought my testimony was minor compared to what the other witnesses were testifying. And after I saw what the mainstream media did with it, myself being an ex-ABC newsman, I
Right.
couldn't imagine. The place was packed with reporters, 22 cameras in the back row, largest event in the history of the National Press Club. How this could not be a world-changing event is what was being disclosed. So a media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write an article on media control and the UFO issue. And I thought, oh my God, I had no idea what the heck happened. And so I thought this was a great opportunity to try to understand it. So I started to look back through history, and I knew all these top secret witnesses and authenticated documents, and I started to plug them in on a chronology of a timeline, and it started to form a pattern of what we weren't taught in school.
For sure, right.
About what was going on. So if you want, we can turbo through this.
Sure, I would love to.
Put a little 100-year timeline of events from 1922 to 2022. We'll just go really fast, and if there's anything you want to dive in a little bit deeper, please just interrupt me, and we'll explore in that a little bit further.
Okay.
But these are and this is not complete by any means. There's a whole lot of other pieces of elements, but these are the ones that kind of popped out at me through the history that seem to indicate, all you can say is, there's a probability of this hidden reality. And when you start getting so many indicators that point to that hidden reality, the probability of that reality becomes very, very high. And I have my own personal experience, and then through the decades, I've had, some experiences, and just knowing so many witnesses and people who have been involved in the secret space program and everything.
Right. Yeah.
It puts the story together. So here we go,
Perfect.
rocketing forward through 100 years of hidden history.
This is going to be awesome. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, let's see, do a share screen here.
Yep. We did test this. It should be good. There we go.
Okay, here's a timeline of events. Everything showing up okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Looks great.
1922, German secret societies. Marie Orsic, head of the Vril Society, she gets a design from an Albanian group of extraterrestrials of a spacecraft, and she translates this in ancient Sumerian script. Her father gives it to Professor Schumann at the University of Munich, that has viable physics in it, and they start to work on it. And by 1934, they achieved anti-gravity, the Nazi SS, with a little help of some reptilians from the Sakar Empire called the Draco, that gave them advanced technology that was able to put Nazi Germany 20 years ahead of the US in technology. And this is key as we go forward in the history.
What I want to ask you, Dan, just about the reptilians. I know a lot that I've studied a lot about the UFOs and with the Nazis and Antarctica and all of that. And I also heard that they were testing like the Bell or whatever. Is that part of all of what you're talking about here? Like with that, like were they testing? Is that part of that technology?
Yeah, the Bell. Hans Kammler, who was Heinrich Himmler put in charge of all these secret projects for the SS. That was using the counter-rotational red plasma physics that could warp time around it, and had anti-gravity effects, and that was one of the early developments that the Germans were doing. They exceeded that considerably, but that was part of the early.
Cool. Just wondering. Very cool.
Okay, the Rockefellers. Now, the Rockefellers work hand in hand along with the Nazi
What a surprise.
program. Yeah, they were doing a psychological study. They funded this whole thing, and had Orson Welles do the War of the Worlds, which 1.7 million people actually believed it to be real. 1.2 million were frightened enough to take action, running away and preparing to fight the alien invaders. They did a study afterward, the psychology of panic. So they were psychologically looking at the population to see what kind of reaction they would have to a fake alien invasion.
Wow.
1939, a single U.S. Navy spy jumps the chain of command, goes directly to Navy Secretary James Forrestal, who commences a secret Navy spy program within. They embedded 29 U.S. Navy operatives into the secret space program of Nazi Germany to get reports back. 1942, there was classified documents show that there was 2 craft that were shot down. The Army Air Force got one, the Navy took the other one. Army took it to Wright-Patterson, the Navy took it to China Lake, and they started the reverse engineering operations. This was the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942. 1942 in August, if you had anti-gravity, well, they made a moon base with their anti-gravity facilities, the Nazis.
Wow.
Before the end of the war, they had a plan called Weltanschauungskrieg. It was to create this matrix of perception, infiltrate into the United States, and means worldview warfare. They plan to take over control of the media, education, Hollywood, pharmaceuticals, you name it. They'd create this whole matrix of perception to hide these operations. And what's crucially important was the takeover of our history. So we had no idea of the Nazi infiltration and escape. 1944, just before the end, over 100 U-boats were missing, 250,000 Germans and the Reich's top scientists that didn't come over on Project Paperclip all went down to base 211, New Schwabenland.
Wow.
Now, this wasn't released until the year 2017, but it turns out that Adolf Hitler was alive and well in Argentina, and Heinrich Himmler escaped as well, who said he would never commit suicide. And they found his body was actually a doppelganger, didn't have the fencing scar on his cheek. The fellow who took the cyanide cap was not Heinrich Himmler. May of 45, Allen Dulles, very infamous for the whole Nazi infiltration, cuts a deal with Nazi intelligence, General Reinhard Gehlen. They had all this intelligence on the Soviets, which they used as a bargaining chip that they had up here buried in the Bavarian mountains to trade with the Truman administration to bring in thousands of Nazi spies into the OSS, which turned into the CIA.
Right, right.
We thought we won the war, May 8th. Everybody with ticker tape parades. Yeah, everybody wanted to believe that. Yeah, we won the war with Germany, but the Nazis fully escaped and infiltrated. United Nations is formed, drafted by two 33rd degree Freemasons, Roosevelt and Churchill's, the secret societies, Freemasons, Skull and Bones, Knights of Malta, all deeply involved in this whole thing.
Really?
Here we have today over 1,600 of the Nazi doctors that were not tried, that were brought right into the CDC right when it was formed. William Tompkins, who was one of, he's a U.S. Navy witness, that highly credible witness that with lots of documented evidence. The Nazi scientists that came over in paperclip took over aerospace biomedical operations within the U.S. One of the first Nazi bio-takeovers were Scripps Research. Eventually, the highest positions within the U.S. pharmaceutical industry are in their control today. That's what William Tompkins.
Wow, that's disturbing, Dan.
Yeah, lots of
Wow.
indicators of that, huh?
There is. Jeez.
And then by September, Operation Paperclip, a lot of people are familiar with this,
Yep.
where they brought over, hundreds of, they rewrote even the Truman's anti-Nazi policies that anybody who was an ardent Nazi, they would not allow, but they rewrote the papers on all these people and brought them into aerospace, biomedical, etc. And here's how they did it. 1946, Rockefeller rewrote the history. It should be they paid about $146,000 to do this, which was a lot of money back in that time. Completely rewrite the books on what happened at the end of World War II. So it's like a generational indoctrination. So the kids in the future have no idea of what happened.
That's incredible.
Admiral Byrd, James Forrestal sent Admiral Byrd down with a complete military armada in order to attack the Nazi base down in Antarctica. His complete fleet, all the aircraft was wiped out by flying discs with directed energy weapons, and he was sworn to secrecy. This was one of the first indications of how the Nazis were able to essentially force later Eisenhower into a surrender agreement, because they had this 20-year jump on us.
That's incredible. And then with that, now with this Operation High Jump and that you were just talking about, how did they sell that to the people? They, from what I hear, they were trying to say that they were going to Antarctica for what reason? What were they selling this as? I'm sure they didn't say to people, "We're going to go find a Nazi base and try to take over it." So how were they selling this as an exploration?
Well, Admiral Byrd was actually interviewed by the press
Right.
and kind of spilled the beans. And he said, our operation is military in
Okay.
nature, quote unquote. And so nobody really questioned it. If they control the media on the whole thing, that was like it was like crickets, nobody said anything. This is before I was born, so I don't know exactly how they handled it in the media, but you would think that would be like a major
Yeah.
major thing, but they wanted to keep it hush up. He was sworn to secrecy. There was a time when he, on his way back, he stopped and a Chilean newspaper interviewed Admiral Byrd, and he said, we may, I'm paraphrasing, have to fight an enemy that can fly from pole to pole at tremendous speeds. And so that article exists, and that's the only thing that, as far as I know, that ever got leaked out. And there was certain witnesses, radio men, talked about it. They're flying over the ships, and the antennas would go like
Yep.
that,
Yep.
as a thing, and it would be like spitting fire from hell. It was like it was a disaster for the U.S. Navy up against this advanced
Wow.
technology.
And as you said, they're 20 years at least ahead of us, minimum.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah, way ahead of us at that time. Then what they do is they bring over the mastermind for Hitler on building deep underground military bases, Xavier Dorsch. They started out right here in the Monsanto Mountains of New Mexico. And this is around 1946-47 area. They started tunneling out and branching out. They use these moles that, kind of melts the rock, turns it into like a glassy, and they've got, the Dulce base and so forth. This is the map that was put out by Phil Snyder, who was an underground base engineer,
I had no
showing.
idea that the Nazis were behind underground bases, Dan. I had no idea.
This was under the U.S. Underground Plant Program, and there's documentation that backs all this up.
Wow.
So yeah, we don't have any, the population on the surface of the planet has no idea what's going on, what's in these bases, what are they doing. But yeah, this was, and over in Nazi occupied Europe, they had huge underground
Mm-hmm.
complexes as well.
Yep.
Everybody's familiar with a crash, that was because of the radar in Roswell, took it down, and a cover story, saying weather balloon, right?
Yep.
That it was taken to Wright-Patterson, the craft. And right after that, Truman initiates a National Security Act, signs that. This is July of 1947. September, like everything, boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
September of Allen Dulles has President Truman reluctantly, he wouldn't want to convert the wartime OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, into a permanent CIA. And the Air Force is also created along with the CIA on this date. And also on this date, September 18th, Truman has James Forrestal create the first Majestic 12 group with Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter as MJ1. And they are basically in charge of overseeing the whole extraterrestrial issue.
Wow.
1948, there's about 100,000 television sets in home now, is a primary communication tool for psychological warfare,
Mm-hmm. For
which
sure.
they have advanced considerably
Oh
over
God,
the
yeah.
years.
Oh, incredible, yeah.
The World Health Organization, formed under the United Nations. And then Project Rand. Now, this is an interesting thing. This is where the split happened between the Air Force and the Navy as far as the extraterrestrial alliances go. Project Rand turns into the Rand Corporation. Now, General Henry Arnold, he was a top person in the Air Force, and he brought in millions of dollars and felt that the Air Force should control and oversee all the extraterrestrial situation. And so it basically forced the Navy out to do its own reverse engineering operations separately. And so the
Oh, I
Navy
see.
did.
Okay.
So there's where the split happened, where later in the future we'll see where the Navy is now working with Nordic looking extraterrestrials from the Galactic Federation, and the Air Force, along with the CIA, is working with the Nazis, and because they had to basically force them to a surrender, working with the reptilian group and the Nazi SS.
Wow.
Now, Forrestal wanted to alert the public to all this, and MJ12 basically threw him out the window of the hospital and murdered him. I was
I
1 month old at this point.
wow. I remember hearing about that. Yep.
1949 gives the approval. 1949 CIA Act gives, now the CIA can do everything without any kind of oversight from the law. And President Truman said that, you know, they can do anything. There's no accountability what the CIA does. And so this gives them legally this black budget, which is a huge amount of money. 1950, Operation Mockingbird. Alan Dulles starts this up, of course, and the CIA is paying 400 journalists in order to disseminate information to the public that the CIA gives them to control the public's perception. This was a major operation that was the start of the plan of the Welkenschauenskrieg, along with the rewriting of the history. Curiously, you know, there was a newspaper tabloid. Generoso Pope was the owner of the Weekly World News, and he was trained by the CIA, this psychological warfare school. And when people go to the check stand and check out their food, they see these ridiculous, silly things. You know, Hillary has an alien baby. You know, gay aliens, and you know. All this crazy stuff. And what they do is what it psychologically does is people just look at this and say, oh, this is just crazy people are into this UFO stuff. And so it effectively discredits it in the public's mind. Now Hollywood under Project Dove started with The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is pretty good, benevolent, you know, that they, you know, if you don't stop your violence or extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder, he says, you know. And then you have War of the Worlds, Invaders from Mars, Flying Saucers Attack. I love Forbidden Planet. It's such an awesome movie.
It is. Yeah, I love it too. Why?
You know,
I gotta ask you though, Dan. Why? I can already see what they're playing here. They got you with the news media. They are making people think that it's like with the stupid stories in those tabloids, and then they with the movies, they're going that aliens are violent. Why are they doing that? Why? Why are they like most movies? You're always being attacked by aliens. At least the ones I see, especially lately. Why are they? Why that agenda? Or do you not know?
they had a plan a long time ago, because they had the advanced technology to pull it off, to have a faked alien invasion. And so fear is how you control people.
100%.
And so the fear element, the thing is, there's 95% of the extraterrestrials out there are benevolent or benign. There is this, you know, that 5% or 4% that is dangerous, and it's just like on Earth, you know, there's like 4% there's psychopaths on the planet. But yeah, there's the fear element, and you know, fear horror movies, you know, people like getting scared. And
it's just crazy that even way back then they were planning this. That just amazes me how far it goes back, and that they were planning so far ahead. To incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a whole lot of documentation of all the people and the secret societies are all behind a lot of the Hollywood entertainment. This is something I've had 10 years experience with. In 1952, they started the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. Thousands, right now there's over 6,000 inventions having to do with free energy, anti-gravity, medical, you name it, across the board. Any scientists, I've traveled around the planet for 10 years vetting scientists and inventors of technology after the congressional hearing was denied. I have a technical background. Uh, these inventors get what's called a national security order, and it basically says that your invention has been deemed to be a detriment to the national security of the United States, therefore you cannot share it with anyone. Anybody you've shared it with, you have to let us know who they are. And you have a secret system within the patent office called sensitive application warning system. Anybody that's got anti-gravity devices, free energy, or anything like that automatically get issued one of these national security orders. So it's been able to keep our planet technologically hijacked. We should have been having anti-gravity, free energy, advanced medical technologies to extend our lives, everything, way back in the 50s. But this is how they've kept our planet technologically hijacked through these national security
Wow,
orders.
that's crazy, Dan. And what's crazy is that you hear about people inventing free energy devices all the time, or cars that run on water, or what name it. And then they all of a sudden what happens? Do they get bought up? Does the government just go in? If say you invented, I invented. Let me say I invented something that's free energy. I can't do this. I'm not a scientist like you or anybody else, but I create something that's free energy. What would happen to me? Would they automatically? They would find out, obviously, right? If I start creating free energy or something.
It depends what you do. If you get a patent, then you will automatically get a national security order. If you try to manufacture it, say one scientist, friend of mine, who has quite an interesting background. He's quite a genius. He had a little small device that was creating about 150 watts, and it's really inexpensive. He had about 60,000 of these made in Japan.
Wow.
His cars were blown up. He was thrown in prison for a while. He got a national security order. Years later, he came up with another invention for another energy, but they didn't give him a national security order, and he still has that. He's an interesting one because he went to the Navy shipyard back in the 70s and was able to acquire one of the Tesla generators on the USS Eldridge that was used in the Philadelphia
Right,
experiment.
right.
And he worked on it for years. It was pretty banged up at the shipyard. And he got it operational, and it created a dimensional portal. And he sent me a photograph of this being coming through the wall that the secretary happened to have a Brownie Instamatic camera. I think it was 1975, and he took a picture of it. Yeah, he's an
That's
incredible
incredible.
mind.
And so that's basically what you're saying is they'll send you this security act right away if you try to patent it. I mean, if you patent it, you're going to get one of these letters, and then if you ignore the letter and you keep going on, then I'm assuming you're going to have bad things happen to you, right? They
Well,
do not.
you go to prison or worse. I flew down to the Dominican Republic with Professor Loiter. We had an energy device there from a Mohawk Indian from Canada that had an energy device, 1 watt going in, 500 watts going out. My job was to blueprint it out and send it by multiple carriers in case we get whacked on the way back. They'd be able to
Jesus.
reproduce it. We flew back down there, and the inventor said 2 CIA agents showed up at his door, and he said, "If this works, you're dead." And so he completely disassembled the entire thing. That's just one of, you can imagine 10 years of experience. I could tell you many
Oh yeah, for
stories.
sure. It's just crazy how they
Um,
don't let people get this out there. It's just it makes me mad when you tell me these stories that we
oh,
could have had
oh,
this.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it either. I thought for sure, I would be able to get something out,
Yep.
but that's why I spent, 10 years, and my wonderful wife, she She went along with, we set up a lab in Virginia, Dr. Greer, and I was meeting with these different scientists and inventors, and we're vetting these technologies, and people were suicided, and just a horror story.
It is.
I've given up on it.
And yeah, it's sad that we're still there. I mean, in this day and age, that we're still so far behind. Like, it's maddening, as we were saying.
And the church, the Vatican's all behind
Of
a official
course.
document, top secret MJ12 report, where they're discussing containment for the Catholic Church if mass sightings ever occur. So this was back back in 1952. So they've been trying to keep a lid on this and keep it secret. They don't want the public to be aware of it. And then in July of 1952, you have 9 Nazi discs coming up from Antarctica, flying over, intimidating the Truman and Eisenhower administration over the Capitol building. And this further intimidated them. Then you have the National Security Agency is then created, which, as you know, is monitoring this conversation
For sure.
with their yottabytes of information and quantum computers and artificial intelligence, sorting everything out. November of 1952, Eisenhower has, since they murdered James Forrestal, they had to replace him with General Walter B. Smith. He was James Forrestal's replacement for the MJ12 group. Shortly after that, General Smith sends a memo. He's a director of Central Intelligence, and planning on using the flying saucers appeared to have implications for psychological warfare and intelligence operations. So they're planning on using the extraterrestrial or the flying saucers, whether they're German or extraterrestrial, use them as psychological warfare. This is 1952. And what happens right after that? Well, George Adamski has contact from the Space Brothers from Venus. But as you can see, the Nazi Haunebu craft is identical to the photograph he takes of the Venetian scout craft. So this is a Nazi CIA psychological operation with George Adamski. And a lot of the things that are back in the 1950s were actually German, but they were testing to see how easily the public could be fooled.
Wow.
And Eisenhower is president. He has my dear friend Laura Eisenhower. He had quite a presidency. They set up the Robinson panel by the CIA to completely deny the reality to the public. They want to keep this secret. You have Einstein and others involved in this. Alan Dulles, then the longest sitting CIA director, is infamous for the Nazi infiltration. He sets up the MK Ultra mind control projects. February 54, Eisenhower has a first contact meeting with the benevolent galactic federations of world extraterrestrials. These are like Nordic looking beings. They had a number of people, from metaphysicians, scientists, clergymen, to see what the reaction would be to meeting these beings. Cardinal Francis McIntyre completely broke his secrecy oath and flew right to the Pope and spilled the beans. And immediately after, the Pope set up this intelligence unit that involved with this whole thing. And then you have another witness, according to Gerald Light, he wrote a letter. And in this letter, he's in his testimonial letter of what happened. It says, "It is my conviction," in part, this letter, "it is my conviction that President Eisenhower will ignore the terrific conflict between the various authorities and go directly to the people via radio and television. If the impasse continues much longer, from what I could gather, an official statement to the country is being prepared for delivery about the middle of May." So they were planning on having full disclosure. Eisenhower wanted to accept what the Galactic Federation was offering, which would incredible technologies across the board, but we had to relinquish our nuclear weapons. But what happened was MJ-12 with Alan Dulles' MJ-1 circumvented it and went behind the back, and they signed a treaty with the Nibu, which is the Greys, the Galactic Federation warned them about it, but the MJ-12 wanted to maintain the secrecy, whereas Eisenhower wanted to have public disclosure.
That's crazy.
And then immediately after, in March, they start up JANUP 146. Means if you're in the military or a civilian pilot, that there's severe penalties if you report extra UFOs in the area. So this is part of the keeping a clamp on it. But they put out a manual in case you do recover one, how to deal with it. So instead of disclosure in May, like Eisenhower was planning, the Nazi SS by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands here in his little Nazi uniform, start the first of yearly ongoing Bilderberg meetings, which coordinate the agenda for the mainstream media. You can see the Bilderberg meetings here with the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. They control, you can see New York Times is there in the middle, Washington Post, CNN, all the usual suspects control the 6 corporations that control, 90+% of what you see and hear on the media to move forward on the agenda.
Wow, they control everything, Dan. That's crazy. Like all the media, I know people that know a lot about the Bilderberg meetings, and I want to ask you, Dan, I know that that's illegal what they do, because they're not allowed to meet and discuss what they do, in secrecy like that. How are they getting around that? That's what I don't understand.
Well, when you have control of the finances, you have control of the media. It's like Rothschild once said, I don't care who makes the laws. Give me control of a nation's money. In other words, they can buy out people, blackmail people. They have control of people in high positions.
Mm-hmm.
They basically write the laws as much as they can get away with.
Right.
Right now they're trying to write laws here in the United States to have a ministry of truth that the government can decide who can say what and what they can't say, which is totally against our Constitution. Our Constitution allows for free speech.
Right.
So this is, an example. They're constantly their objective is to create a new world order, reduce 90% of the population, and enslave what's left. And then they have the advanced technologies for themselves. That's their plan.
Wow.
But and they were working with regressive extraterrestrials such as the Nibu, the Greys, and the Draco from the Sakaar Empire that was working behind the scenes with them in order to move forward on this agenda, because they're using the Earth as a resource. A lot of people go missing. There's a huge galactic slave trade, and they use people for, we won't go into it, but
Jeez. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Here we go, back onto our timeline.
Yep. Perfect.
And so here was the treaty called the Grenada Treaty, was signed with the Orion Nibus at Kirkland Air Force Base. My friend Elena Danan says, who has direct contact, official contact with the Nibu Empire, but as well with the Draco Reptilian Empire, the Sakaars, allied with the Antarctica Fourth Reich. The industrial military complex signed agreements with both without avail from Eisenhower. So what happens is Nelson Rockefeller completely restructures under Eisenhower the complete CIA MJ-12 operations, which leaves President Eisenhower without jurisdiction or access any further. And so they're setting this whole thing up so that they have complete control.
Right.
And they move all their operations from Wright-Patterson over to Area 51 and S4, which is controlled under the control of the CIA. Here's Area 51 at Groom Lake, and Papoose Lake is the S4, where they do the reverse engineering and extraterrestrials. And you will be shot if you try to go there.
Yeah, I've seen videos of people even just going to the gate and they're just followed.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Incredible.
October 1954 is when the United States developed anti-gravity, 20 years behind the Nazis. My dear friend, who I believe was suicided with a shotgun to his head, one of the 20 witnesses that I joined, Mark McCandish, he allowed me to use this sketch. This is from 1988, a showing to the top military brass at Norton Air Force Base. So you have different size. These were called alien reproduction vehicles. He was a draftsman for the for the military industrial complex, I guess you could say. And so he made a detailed drawing, and I actually sat down with him at the bar at the Hilton. And he went over, he knew I had a good technical background and about how there's a Tesla coil configuration on here, and there's a mercury vapor tube, and you have these capacitor plates, and this thing can go faster than the speed of light. And it was actual photograph from a Navy pilot up by Utah or Idaho, one of the two, where it sees a very similar configuration. And so these were called alien reproduction vehicles that were operational back in the 1950s.
Wow.
So here's where the surrender happens at Holloman Air Force Base, where Antarctic Nazi craft came down, and Germans were on board, and there was also extraterrestrials, and Eisenhower went on board, and basically a surrender agreement was negotiated on February 11th, 1955. And once that surrender agreement, a new MJ-12 group here was formed. Alan Dulles is MJ-1, father of the hydrogen bomb, William Tiller and other, Curtis LeMay. And they kind of took over where the old MJ-12 group left off. Now, Walt Disney, along with Wernher von Braun, who had his papers completely rewritten because he was an ardent Nazi, are selling the public on the whole idea that using rocket propulsion to go into space. When Wernher von Braun knew full well they had figured out the torsion physics and they had anti-gravity, and his mentor, Professor Hermann Oberth, said, how did you guys become so advanced? He said, well, we had help from people from other worlds. And so they're 33rd degree Freemason here. So they're in cahoots selling this to the public. And so what happens right after all these negotiations? Operation Deep Freeze, transferring supplies and personnel down to Antarctica. What a coincidence, huh? And then you have different things happening. You have Willard Wanall, who has a contact in Hawaii. A Nazi craft comes down. It's got a swastika on it and a Nazi Iron Cross. And the saucer pilot spoke with a German accent, had a Nazi uniform on. Hello.
That's weird.
And part of the Weltanschauungskrieg, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, part of the worldview warfare was hundreds of universities were, Professor Hans Eisnick in London said there was this global conspiracy in order to have the educational institutions silence the truth about what we knew about the powers of human consciousness to affect reality. See, the Nazis were very much into the occult.
Right.
They
100%.
and very much tied into the secret societies. And they know the power of consciousness to affect reality. And so they want to keep people stupid and dumb and afraid, and that we don't have the power to affect reality. And so this is part of, on another level, you could say, to keep the public in the dark while they move forward on their agenda. Astronaut Gordon Cooper, he actually filmed the UFO and, said they had to tell one untruth after another. I'm sure it's going to come out someday. And Philip Corso by White Sands actually has an encounter with a being who wants him to shut off the radar so he can get out of there. And Corso says arrogantly to him, well, if I help you, well, what's in it for me? What do I get out of it? E.T. replies, a new world if you can take it. Now here's with the Galactic Federation, Val Thor, also known as Valiant Thor, arrives in a spaceship near Alexandria, Virginia, to meet with President Eisenhower, and actually was a guest in the Pentagon for several years. They offer to help Earth and to give us advanced technologies and extend our life, to end all disease, across the board. You can imagine his incredible offer to help Earth was refused because these positive solutions would jeopardize Earth's corporations, such as the pharmaceutical and the energy industries. Let's see, my friend Elena says, Val Thor, as an ambassador of the Galactic Federation, comes to set up a program, a collaboration with the Navy. See, the Navy was working since the Air Force, along with the CIA, was kind of tied in with that surrender agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And remember back when the RAND Corporation had a division where the Navy did its own separate program.
Yep.
This allowed the Galactic Federation to go in, as William Tompkins, who was, working with these Nordic extraterrestrials, giving him information telepathically. This is what set up the Solar Warden fleet, would come out of it. The purpose was to help the humans of Earth fight back against the Nibu and the Sicars, the Greys and the Draco.
Okay.
Reinhold Schmidt in Nebraska, a Nazi craft comes down, and this was in the newspaper, and he could hear them talking amongst themselves, and he was German himself, and he says they were talking in High German language, very good High German language.
Wow.
You have Commander Denethor of the Galactic Federation of Worlds helping the U.S. Navy build their fleet of spacecraft. Here, you can see him here with a meeting. Here's I got a blank. Anyway, sometimes that happens. I get like a total blank.
That's
anyway,
okay.
The father of the Deep Underground Military Base engineer. Can you help me with that one?
We were just talking about it.
Yeah, we were just talking about Phil Snyder. There we go. Yeah, I knew
Phil
it'd come in
Snyder.
eventually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about him.
Oscar Snyder, his father was a Nazi U-boat captain, and he was in charge of the medical facility of what ship? The USS Eldridge.
Jeez.
Used in the Philadelphia experiment. And here's is an actual rendering what it actually looks like of one of these mantis beings, a very kind, loving being, very highly evolved. one of, hundreds of races out there. Now, 1958, President Eisenhower, he wanted to see what was going on since they moved all their operations over to Area 51 and S4.
Mhm.
He was threatened and to invade the base if MJ-12 doesn't allow him access. He said something, I'm paraphrasing, I don't care what kind of secret operations you have going on. I'm going to get the First Army out of Colorado. We're going to come in and we're going to rip this thing apart. I don't care what kind of secret things you've got going on. And so they finally allowed 2 CIA agents to go in and give him a report. He saw the several craft there, also extraterrestrials there. This was one of, on his deathbed, basically, gave testimony to with
I know what you're talking about too.
having these blankouts on names. Richard Dolan, yeah.
Richard
Dolan
Dolan.
interviewed him. Yeah. Anyway, in 1958, this date's estimated, but President Eisenhower, since having all this, surrendering agreements and denied access and restructuring and everything, here is the man who set up the invasion for Normandy, right, during World War II. This is a 5-star heavy-duty military general. And so, of course, he would set up something like this. He sets up a secret executive order for U.S. Marine Corps Special Section Military Intelligence Unit to act as a future institutional safeguard for a constitutional republic. This is according to a couple of witnesses that were actually in this U.S. Marine Corps Special Section that Eisenhower set up. And 1958, DARPA doing all the wonderful little things that they do.
Yeah, you gotta love DARPA. Oh my God.
We know about them. And then NASA, is run by the former Nazi SS. Here's Professor DeBus, making us believe we need primitive rocket propulsion, like Elon Musk is using.
Right.
And then we have on Eisenhower's staff, one of our Disclosure Project witnesses, Brigadier General Stephen Lovkin, witnessed the control and loss of the corporations. Let's see, I think we're sharing audio. Let me know if you can hear this.
But what happened was Eisenhower got sold out. I think that he realized that all of a sudden this matter is going into the control of corporations. He realized that he was losing control. He realized that the phenomenon of whatever it was that we were faced with was not going to be in the best hands, and that those were as far as I can remember, that was the expression that was used. It's not going to be in the best hands. And so it has turned out to be.
And so it has turned out to be, and he's kind of understating it.
For sure, yes.
And of course, if you had anti-gravity, of course, you'd want to have a lunar military outpost, which never really happened in the future. Here's Professor Herman Oberth talking about publicly, we had help from people from other worlds. The Antarctic Treaty is signed, yet
I remember
the Nazis
this is shady.
are secretly in violation, utilizing slave labor underground for their military space operations. It's supposed to be like non-military, it's supposed to be all peaceful, diplomatic kind of things, but they've got these operations going under 2 miles of ice.
So that's why nobody's allowed in Antarctica, right? That treaty still holds, and it's the only treaty that's ever held this long, I'm sure, between all these countries. They seem to be all in, so they're all in cahoots of this, right? They all know what's going on in Antarctica.
Yeah, I was actually going to work down there for a year in isolation, running the radio shack that for a supply ship coming back and forth from Argentina. That for the national, I was all set up to go there and everything. They needed somebody that they had licenses. I had the highest class licenses and everything, and so I could operate all the communications equipment. But I had a little trouble in Vietnam, with some marijuana. But they were able to find that in my record. We can't have your your type down there. But yeah, it's all CIA, NSA, all military intelligence operations down there, along with scientists. Now, interestingly enough, since remember, Hitler completely escaped, right? And he's living in Argentina, according to, in 2017, these documents that got released in the JFK files. Well, he's alive and well in Bariloche, Argentina, no Nazi hideout. And President Eisenhower goes down there, and beautiful place down there where they, like little Bavarian town. And most likely he met with the Fuhrer. And everybody's familiar with this.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Now, the military-industrial complex, keep in mind, was infiltrated by the Fourth Reich at this point. And he's talking about the misplaced powers and unwarranted influences. He couldn't say it exactly, but he tried to cryptically warn the public when he left office.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.
Wow. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry, that's you viewers out there paying attention to all this, can protect our future liberties and freedoms, because there was an infiltration that happened. And he tried to lay all this on with Kennedy. They had private meetings, Camp David, about the whole situation of the CIA, and that's why he said he wanted to splinter it into a million pieces and spread it to the wind. And MJ-12, with Allen Dulles. Now, what's really fascinating is during this time in the early 60s, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, through the Office of Naval Intelligence, seeds a future timeline into the Earth's collective mind with the Star Trek series. It turns out that Leslie Stevens Jr., who was the creator of The Outer Limits, his father, they're both in Office of Naval Intelligence. Admiral Leslie Stevens was a contemporary of Admiral Rico Boda, who was working with the 29 Navy spies embedded into the Nazis' secret space program. They were giving reports that William Tompkins was disseminating out to McDonnell Douglas and University. We're trying to catch up with all this. Anyway, on his set was Gene Roddenberry. And the Galactic Federation of Worlds, with the Office of Naval Intelligence, was seeding him this script for Star Trek, with all these advanced concepts of warp drives, teleportation, and most importantly, the Prime Directive. The Prime Directive is something that's real, that advanced races can't interact with a lesser evolved race. You don't want to interfere with their evolutionary process. And so because the Draco and the Nibu both interfered with our process of evolution by assisting the Nazis, this gave the Galactic Federation basically, it was their moral responsibility, according to the Prime Directive, to assist the U.S. Navy to sort of counterbalance this whole thing.
Okay. Very interesting.
Now, William Tompkins, when he was working at TRW, was actually seeing the. I remember I was going on watch at the. Worked at a top secret facility with an avian communications. I remember seeing the astronauts jumping around on the television in the officers' little area, and during this time, he was working at TRW, where there was a live video feed of what was actually going on the moon that was censored to the public. Now, ham radio operators back on Earth, they caught Neil Armstrong and said, "Oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there's other spacecraft out there.
Yep.
They're lined up on the far side of the crater. They're on the moon watching us." Now, the people, they said it was an overheated camera, and so there was like a 2-minute cutout of this. But he had a photographic memory. That's how they brought him into Office Naval Intelligence. He was making these little tiny ships and things that he could see all the secret things and so Office Naval Intelligence saw that, and they brought him into the Navy. But anyway, he's watching the live video feed at TRW and seeing these. Now, see this little speck down here on the photograph? That's the lunar module. And there's two tiny little specks is Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And you can see what he's talking about. These things are huge. They're enormous. They're lined up. Basically, they warned them off the moon. As Tompkins says, an alien voice was clearly heard over the Apollo 11 radio transmission. It said, quote, "Finish a total of 6 of your Apollo missions, take your photos, pick up some rocks, go home, and don't come back," unquote. This is how this threatening action by one or more extraterrestrial groups effectively put an end to the Apollo program, as well as the Navy's covert NOVA program for manned moon base, is described by Tompkins this way, quote, "The no trespassing sign went up. With the program over, everybody went home, and nearly all 400,000 NASA and contractor employees got the pink slip," unquote. So that's what happened. Why they had to finish a couple of missions, just because they were committed to that, but that was it. And that's why there was like this long period, since that time to here it is, the year 2022, and we're just now starting about going to the moon.
Exactly.
Okay.
I had no idea the ships were that big. Like, that's incredible, the size of them.
Oh, God, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, he wasn't kidding when he said they were huge, enormous. These babies are huge, sir. Okay. Since, let me get a little water here. Since Eisenhower lost control and MJ-12 kind of took over, that surrender agreement in 1955 with Eisenhower, future presidents, it doesn't matter who you are, a CIA director, you can be the head of intelligence, or now everybody after Eisenhower is all being illegally denied access. And it starts with President Kennedy. There was a top secret memo that he was requesting the UFO files, and this is in a public domain, anybody can look this up. There was an assassination directive written up by Alan Dulles, MJ1, to be carried out. It was called Project Environment. Is something cryptically like when there's no longer have cooperation in Washington, then the weather is lacking precipitation. It should be wet. In other words, wet works. In other words, they always use a term like that when they have to do with assassination, wet with blood, in other words. And so 10 days after he put in that memo, they assassinated our president. Jimmy Carter, he actually had a UFO in, he filled out a report and everything on this UFO experience he had. He made it his campaign promise to release the UFO files. The president is denied access by the CIA director, George H.W. Bush, heavy connected and with the Nazis and everything. So here the CIA director is denying a sitting president access. President Clinton. Now, the event that I participated in was actually sponsored by Sarah McClellan, famous White House correspondent. And she was quoted, Clinton, who was really interested in the UFO issue, wanted to understand what was going on with it. And she asked him, why aren't you disclosing it? And he said, quote, "Sarah, there's a secret government inside the government and I don't control it." And so he had his CIA director, James Woolsey, try to look into it. The CIA directors denied access. There was military and intelligence. And so he brought in a civilian, Dr. Stephen Greer, who was the director for the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, who brought a huge stack of documents supporting the reality of it. And in a 3-hour private meeting, he said, I know the subject's real. I want to know why the hell I can't gain access to it. And he put out a letter later, denying the whole thing, that nothing happened. Dr. Greer made the whole thing up.
Yeah, crazy. And
Okay.
Dr. Greer is doing documentaries now, right? Like he's doing a lot of work in disclosure currently.
Yeah, he's got movies out, with Unacknowledged and a couple of films out. Dr. Greer and I, we differ in opinion on that. It seems that there is some extraterrestrials that are not a very small portion of them, but still there are some that you wouldn't want to encounter.
Right.
Not all of them are benevolent, and
makes sense
according to many witnesses. But commend him for his bravery. He gathered hundreds of witnesses. I was the 100th videotape witness, and he had his life threatened not to go before the mainstream media of the world, and he went for it anyway. So he deserves a lot of kudos for that.
100%.
Here's something, my interest in this. I had a meeting with a group of civilian researchers. The first time that Robert Lazar ever went before the public, and a little group meeting outside of Area 51 underneath this military tent. They had about a dozen or so people hitting with nonstop questions. And absolutely no video recordings were allowed whatsoever, but I was sitting in the front row with my camcorder going, and you can see the full 2 hours at thewebmatrix.net in the 1993 timeline and everything he has said has stayed 100% consistent over the decades. And so this event, it freaked the base out that this information was being disclosed. And so Area 51 went into lockdown. And there was a classified NRO, it's National Reconnaissance Office. They deal in a lot of this stuff, security advisory that was sent to all base personnel operations. On the distribution list is unacknowledged special access programs, such as Cosmic Ops and Magi Ops. These operations are reverse engineering the extraterrestrial craft over at S4. I'm just displaying a portion of this document. You can see the full document on my website.
Perfect.
And so Dr. Greer takes this document, somehow he acquires it, and sets up a meeting at the Pentagon. He's joined with Lieutenant Commander Will Miller and astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell to meet with the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson. The Admiral is asking to be read into these unacknowledged special access programs listed on an NRO document that are reverse engineering the ET craft, and is denied access. And is not only denied access, but he's threatened to immediately drop any further investigation, or he's going to lose rank and be retired early. The Admiral is furious that his high level of constitutional authority, him being the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs, should have had constitutional authority, if anybody. And he's being denied access to these illegal operations. He authorizes Dr. Greer to bring forth witnesses before the mainstream media that would be willing to testify under oath before a congressional hearing by saying, quote, as far as I'm concerned, if you can get your people to know about this matter and talk on record, you have my permission to go to the media with this. This group is illegal. And that's where the legal part comes in, because these operations are operating outside of our legal constitutional government. And so that's what Dr. Greer does. Here I am, the number 6 of 20 witnesses. in front of the mainstream media of the world. Each one of us stated our testimonies and said that we're willing to testify under oath. We were backed by over 500 military intelligence witnesses. It was the largest event in the history of the National Press Club, with 22 cameras in the back row. Place was packed with reporters asking questions. Myself being an ABC newsman, what was being disclosed was,
I was
my
going to ask you
God,
that.
proof of legal government being denied access, that illegal unacknowledged special access programs are taking in trillions. 0-point energy solutions have been suppressed that would eliminate the need for nuclear oil and coal. There's a little side story on that. In 1996, Dr. Greer met with the CIA director, William Colby, who was going to give him $50 million and an extraterrestrial derived 0-point energy device in order to get it out to the public. 1 week later, he was found floating face down in the Potomac River, ruled a boating accident.
Wow.
Anti-gravity craft being developed back in the 1950s. A base exists on the far side of the moon. Dr. Carl Wolf, who actually saw this, he was killed on his bicycle, run over by a big truck. Astronauts are sworn to secrecy what happened when they went to the moon, and NASA is purposely airbrushing the ET craft before releasing to the public. My dear friend Donna Hare, who I toured the Capitol building with, and she actually sent me a letter in the mail saying that she had kind of threats against her life, and she passed away of cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
57 different ET species had already been cataloged since 1989. My friend Elena Danan's got a book called A Gift from the Stars. She has 110 different species and the star systems they come from and illustrations of them. So by 1989, they had a medical book where Clifford Stone would go on these crash retrievals, and if the ET was injured, some are silicone based, some are carbon based, they would have a medical procedure on how these 57 different species should be treated. ET craft to shut down nuclear ICBM bases. That was Captain Robert Salas, where he was 70 feet under the ground, and his guards on the top side with their weapons drawn. A glowing red saucer came over and rapidly just shut them all down. They could have destroyed the whole base, but they just turned them off. U.S. Navy reporting a spacecraft and secret reports coming out. That's my report. Planned future false flag events, with terrorists being next, followed by rogue nations, asteroids, aliens. Note this was in May of 2001. Everybody knows what happened in September of 2001.
Yes.
We actually had the terrorist event happen. Afterward, we then had the rogue nations, which is Iran and North Korea. After that, it's going to be asteroids, which they have the rods of God. They can pull that off. And then the final one was a fake alien invasion. And there's a whole lot more that was discussed, but these are some of the highlights of what was discussed. Now, you'd think any one of these would have, myself being an ex-ABC newsman, I naively thought at the time, all these cameras, newspaper reportings, all these explosive testimonies, how would this not be a world-changing event? And so, here I am on CNN, a CIA operative here, and this is Commander Graham Bethune, rather, who actually flew Admiral Byrd down to Antarctica. He was his pilot. Basically, the controlled mainstream media sanitized this from the public's awareness using what's called, the intelligence community calls it, a limited hangout. In other words, they made the whole thing sound as though we wanted to have simply a congressional hearing on the reality of just UFOs. So what it did was a limited hangout made it sound, yes, we were talking about UFOs, but they omitted all of these explosive testimonies. And at the time, in 2001, this guy had no idea what Operation Mockingbird was.
Wow. So then basically this never got exposure then. This whole thing that we're talking about, you guys all testifying, everything got buried.
Everything on all the mainstream media all had the same talking points. CBS wanted to do an interview, and I saw what CNN did with it, and I said, I'm not doing this unless I could say we have these scientists that can prove before an open congressional hearing, put it on the table, working zero-point energy device. We don't need nuclear, oil, and coal. They promised I could do that. They interviewed me for 45 minutes. Afterward, the producer said, I know I promised, but I never had this happen before. The higher executives made me cut that part out. And so that kind of got me on my journey, being an ex-ABC newsman, that, not a big anchor man on any big network or anything like that, but I was in radio. I was a broadcast engineer, and I used to do the news reports that would come off of UPI and AP, and I would read the news. And I had no idea who was preparing these news reports,
Right.
and who was wording them, and who was vetting this information. You just naturally assume that all this information is vetted by well-meaning journalists that would do the due diligence and check to make sure everything's accurate. And so, yeah, on the mainstream media, it only got a minute and a half little blip. My wife actually happened to, who wasn't my wife at the time, happened to see me on CNN, and oh, Dan's the man, look at him, he's on CNN, and so it did grab the attention of a hacker in the UK. His name was Gary McKinnon.
Yep, I was going to say that, yep.
And, on the alternative media, I've seen my testimony in a couple of different languages, so on the alternative media, which isn't as controlled as the mainstream media, a lot more got circulated and inspired people like my friend Dr. Michael Sal, who's now a world authority on exopolitics, exopolitics.org. Check out, he's got the latest information on what's going on. Anyway, he was inspired and looked into the computers and saw this huge spacecraft. There was the USS Hillenkotter. Who is Hillenkotter? When we look back at our history lesson, he was the first CIA director and MJ1 of the first MJ12 group. And LeMay, he was the second MJ12 group he was brought into. Lists of non-terrestrial officers. They wanted to put the poor guy away for like 70 years in prison. The Bush administration was so upset, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember when this came out. This was big stuff when they found the name of all the all the extraterrestrial officers, and that was a big thing when that came out.
Oh, this is so important what he did.
Yes.
Because today we have many secret space program people who were involved in the Solar Warden program. They're on the Solar Warden spacecraft. Interviewed my dear friend John Charles, who he's like he go rescue people from the reptilians and the technologies that they have on board the Solar Warden craft that he was on, called the Solaris, where they have med beds and replicators, and I mean, just the technology is way beyond anything you've seen in science fiction.
Yeah, you were telling me when we were talking at one time, you were telling me about I think it might have been on the radio show or somewhere we were talking in one of my interviews I did with you, that about some of the technology that they have, like medical especially. And
oh yeah,
I was just like
how...
incredible, like what you're telling me, like what seems like the medicine we have now is nowhere near what they have. Like, it's so primitive.
Oh, it's so corrupt.
Yes.
The whole medical system is completely corrupted. The holographic medical technology can cure any disease. It could age reverse you, add hundreds of years onto your life. They can replicate anything with the replicators. I mean, the technology is like, you can imagine with beings that are like thousands of years, millions of
Right,
years in
right.
advance, So this is what they do with this technology using these med beds. They kind of prep them, groom them, I guess you could say, around the early age, 5, 6 years old, and then around 17, they take them to the moon, sign the papers, and then they do the separate timeline of 20 years in space. And at the end of their tour of duty at 7 years, 20 years in space, they age regress and time regress back to the point of enlistment and erase their memory. And then they start along in a normal earthly timeline as though nothing ever happened. And after 20 years lapses on this timeline, all of them start having, many of them anyway, start having total memory
I
recall
was just
of
going to
their.
ask you that, Dan. I was just going to say somebody's got to be remembering. This has got to have a flaw in it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, all over the place. Michael, now this program launched back in the 1980s. So what's 20 years after 1980, year 2000? The first
2000.
one came out as Michael Ralph.
Yep.
And he was in the Navy and on Mars, and Randy Kramer came out afterward, Michael Gerloff, my friend Tony Rodriguez, who unfortunately got put on kind of a slave operation on Sirius with a Nazi colony, and operations on Mars. It just, incredible. It keeps its own best secrecy because people have a hard time wrapping their mind around that such technologies, can
Yep.
exist. But they use these medical, med beds that perform all this. And a number of operations started to happen. The Guardians, they're called, have set up an outer barrier around our solar system on this date. And in October of 2020, the Artemis Accords were signed, which is the first step to kind of like a space NATO and a future Starfleet. In other words, they're already having slave operations all over our solar system. They're in these deep underground places on Mars and so forth, as witnesses have testified. And there's a lot of human rights abuse going on and the underground bases here on our planet. And so these Artemis Accords are kind of it's sort of a moral base where the human rights abuse isn't going to be a factor anymore, where nations group together and sign these treaties where we can go into space and not be like Nazis,
Right.
and abuse people. And in the mainstream, you have the ex-head of the Israeli space program, reveals the U.S. ET base on Mars, that the Galactic Federation is waiting for the right time to be revealed to the people of Earth, this Galactic Federation. And so, you have people of this caliber, coming out in the like in the New York Post, for example. Now, this is from other sources. My friend Elena actually had, when she was a child, she was abducted by the Nibu, who wanted to put an implant in her. She was rescued by the Galactic Federation, the Nordic type beings, and they made it into a communication device. And so she's been a huge download of information of all these, the history of the whole and it's been corroborating. It's not just it's information that she gives. Like for example, recently in the news, they're talking about all this stuff happening on planet Neptune, warming up, and Thorhan, he's a Palladian, gave her the information beforehand, and also gave her information about they're going to find a huge arc down in the Bermuda Triangle a week before Dr. Michael Salla has another military contact who actually went down to the arc. There's these arcs all over our planet that are activating because the galactic confederation of ships have arrived into our solar system, and because of their presence, all these arcs all over our solar system are now activating. Anyway, so that's a little history behind these events. The moon is liberated. See, the moon had the reptilians who were warning us off and everything back then, basically are purged. The Nibu, the Greys, and the Draco are being purged out of our solar system. And the first raids on Mars and the liberation from the Dark Fleet. Now, the Dark Fleet is basically when the Nazi SS entered into agreements with the Sakaar Empire, the Dracos. They created what was called the Dark Fleet, which gave them advanced technology and work alongside the Draco. And so the first raids on Mars and the liberation of Mars happened in April of 2021. In June of 2021, now my friend Mark McCandish was going to testify at this about the faster than light craft that he testified at, along with, you know, the other witnesses that we joined. And he was met with a shotgun blast to the head 1 week after Mike Tuber, who was a U.S. Air Force intelligence specialist, who 2 years prior to this, remember the Tic Tac in the year 2017? Everybody and your grandmother knows about the Tic Tac and the Navy pilot and everything like that. Well, the Tic Tac, he testified that was actually the craft that could go 24,000 miles per hour and 500 miles per hour under the ocean was actually made in a Lockheed facility in Palmdale, California. He, 1 week before Mark is suicided, he comes out publicly and says, oh, the story I made about the Tic Tac being made in the USA, I made it all up. It was all just a test, you know, to see how people react. You know, very highly suspicious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what does his testimony and Mark's testimony both confirm? That we have this advanced technology. And here in this report by the Director of National Intelligence, they say that some UAP, the other name for UFOs, unacknowledged, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Phenomenon, yep.
Operations could be attributed to developments and classified U.S. entities. We're unable to confirm this, however, like, you know, unable to confirm or deny, right? So they're kind of off the hook. But they know damn well that they have this technology, and these technologies could very well be ours. Antarctica is liberated. The Dark Fleet, their operations that they had, huge secret space operations, are liberated by the Earth Alliance, which is our group of secret space program, you could say.
Okay.
Now the Galactic Federation of Worlds wins the war on Mars, and now there's indigenous races that live. They're insectoid races and some positive reptilians, I believe, on there. They now are giving their planet back to them as of June. And here's something interesting along one of my favorite subjects is the control of the media and how all this gets kept secret. Is in July 6th of 2021. Every year since it was 1983, the CIA meets in this little town of Sun Valley, Idaho, with all of the media, you know, CNN, MSNBC, you've got Google, New York Times, you know, all the controlled media, basically the very highly top secret meeting to control their agenda. And look at this. In 1983, there was actually 50 companies, corporations that controlled the media.
Right.
Since that time, they consolidated their control. One big one buys another one, and they can gobble them up until Right now, they consolidated it down to 6 corporations that control GE, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS, that control 90+% of everything you see and hear on the television. So they coordinate their agenda. And well, here we have this Sun Valley Conference, Mr. Weasel here, and Biden's CIA director, who is very China friendly. Wonder what they're all working on. And you look at the list of people that are on these things, the CIA directors, Zuckerberg, Dorsey, Twitter, Google, Apple, Council of Foreign Relations, Comcast, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, CBS, New York Times, CNN, ABC, CBS, goes on and on and on. You have even
universities. Wow.
Yeah, even the universities. So they're all coordinating together to control the perception of the public through their media, through the mainstream media and social media as well. Now here's a big event that happened in July of 2021. Also, let's see, what was the date difference here? It was like July 6th. And just a couple of days later, there's secret meetings near Jupiter that decide the future of the solar system. Now, from what I understand from the intel, is like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson, they participated in this meeting supposedly. I don't have any just from reports from but basically what they're going to be doing is the cabal, I guess you could say, that controls the planet, they gave them 5 months until December of 2021 to basically surrender.
Wow.
And so in August, finally the Phobos, Deimos, and Sirius, where my friend Tony Rodriguez spent many years of his life in there, are all liberated. And then most of the underground occupation by the regressive extraterrestrials have been cleared out of the deep underground military bases in September of 2021. And here I found this very fascinating. My friend Dr. Michael Salla was given information from Elena Danaan via her implant from Commander Thorhan E. Redrian of the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And essentially, the prime directive, as it was put into Star Trek, what he found was that this goes into a lot of details, but basically saying that higher advanced races can't interfere with lower evolving races, and that it's their duty basically to intervene if that happens. And Dr. Michael Salla finds a book, which now Elena's French, and she was a Star Trek fan, but she had no idea of this book that laid out in detail the prime directive, and the wording is almost identical between this book that was put out in, what year was that book? Yeah, I don't know exactly, but it was a long time ago, confirming the Galactic Federation. And then Alex Collier talks about the Andromedas. They have temporal viewing technology where they can see way into the future. And so there was like 357 years in the future, there was this galactic-wide tyranny in the timeline that happened. And they were able to isolate it down to our little solar system, down to exactly the Earth, Moon, and Mars.
Okay.
And so that basically, they gave the go-ahead of the Galactic Federation to intervene. And so that's what happened. This goes in a little bit of how the med beds work and everything. They're basically, I'll say briefly, they take a holographic picture of you, and in that picture, and I've worked in the, that's another hat I wear. In the 1980s, I worked with IBM's head scientist who set up a laboratory for Psychic Research Incorporated, working with medical doctors and cutting crystals. And one of the things we worked on was a holographic camera that could tune backwards and forwards in the time. And this was patented, and hundreds, thousands of photos actually were taken with this. And so it substantiates the technology that Alex Collier is talking about that the med beds use, which can take a holographic picture of you, and it goes all the way back from your present time to all the way back to your conception. And what they do is they can assemble when all the parts of your body were optimal through time, like slides, and make a new hologram and overlay it on your body, and it age reverses you and heals whatever disease and everything like that. And some of these people, in battle where they lose their arm and leg, in space, they're put on this med beds, and within a matter of a couple of hours, their arm or leg is completely regenerated. So it's incredible holographic, because everything in the universe is holographic. And these beings have, perfected the science. What I worked on in the 1980s was primitive compared to that.
But you were working basically on a camera that did the same thing in a way, right? You were saying a holographic camera. So you were...
Well, it didn't do basically the same thing, but it substantiated the principles involved. In other
right,
words,
that's what I meant. Right.
It could holographically project into space, and they'd have like a photographic plate and capture a slice of the 3D, and that image could be tuned forwards and backwards into time, and the person could be anywhere, anywhere on Earth, and the woman was like 50 miles away. We're taking, well, I wasn't involved in taking the picture, but Delaware was taking a picture of the baby within it she was pregnant with, and she can move it forwards and backwards into time to see different levels. And this was patented by the European Patent Office.
Wow, that's incredible.
Okay. Yeah, that's enough for another show.
I know, I was just going to say that's another show with you.
October
Wow.
of 2021, ancient space arcs activate, and that's what's happening right now. The arrival of the Intergalactic Confederation fleet.
What do you mean by space arcs? I don't know. What do you mean by that?
These are, they're all over our solar system. There's one on the moon. There's one in the Bermuda Triangle. There's one in Ukraine. There's one in Russia and China,
Wow.
around Brazil. These are like these huge spacecraft, when they talk about Noah's Ark, and they had like 2 giraffes and 2 elephants and 2 lions, and
Yep.
2 of everything. They weren't taking the animals on board.
They were taking the DNA.
DNA.
Right.
And so the ancient cultures that were here before us, they had holographically, and they use crystals and all this incredible technology that is an archive of their technology, and also an archive of all the different species and everything like that. Anyway, it's like a depository for in the future when they activate it. And apparently this entire huge fleet of Intergalactic Confederation is arriving, and all of these are activating. They have military personnel that have gone down into these things, and just certain DNA and everything activates it, and you have to. Yeah, it's just incredible. I recommend exopolitics.org for the latest information on the space arcs that are activating.
Wow, I'll be checking that out.
Elena says on this one, when the Intergalactic Confederation arrived in our star system, the ancient arcs activated. The disclosure process is set up. The Earth Alliance will disclose data following a precise plan, and the good ETs will show more ships in our skies to prepare civilians for contact. Now, remember back in July of 2021, they gave the cabal 5 months to surrender. And what they were going to do is they would allow the cabal, for lack of a better term, to go to Antarctica, where there's a portal, and they would be basically sent to another planet in another galaxy. It would be kind of like a prison planet where they were banned from Earth forever. And yeah, it sounds like out of a Superman science fiction or something. I know, yeah. But they would have to help us take back our financial system and all the systems that they have put in place, including, and this goes into the esoteric aspect. There was, I guess, dark spells put upon our planet that only they have the keys to unlock, and so they were supposed to unlock this. But the latest is that they reneged on their agreement, as you can see in the news.
Yep.
And what what's happening is that when the Nibu were purged out of our solar system, they apparently left a lot of, for lack of programs or time bombs to be set off that would try to control the situation once they were, see, they've been put out of our solar system, and the barrier that was set up is keeping them out. And right now, the Galactic Federation of Worlds is working on the moon to not only build these med beds to be released to humanity, but also a star fleet of our own with advanced technologies and weaponry in order to protect us in the future, so we can protect ourselves against the Nibu and Draco, the Sakara Empire, if they ever come back in the future. Ongoing liberation of planet Earth. And so this is where we're at today. It's interesting. Yeah, my two French friends, Elena Danan and Jean Charles, they have both been on these craft of the Solar Ward and the Solaris, and the huge, massive mothership that is like unbelievably huge, the Excelsior. They are parked somewhere near Jupiter, and from what I understand, they are in Earth's outer orbit right now. They're parked, and so there is a this is like kind of the final countdown, for the liberation of planet Earth. So we just went through like 100 years of history. Let's see, my God, it almost took 2 hours.
I know. I'm so thankful for your time, Dan. I knew it was going to take a while. That's why I didn't want to interrupt you too much.
My God, yeah, it's almost.
I know. I just checked my clock too. I was like, wow. I thought we were only talking for about 45 minutes, to be honest. And I looked at my watch and I'm like, oh my God.
Yep, time flies when you're having fun.
It does. And before I let you go, I have to ask you because I know people that I've talked to that and in the community that talk about abductions and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, I'm assuming the abductions and all of that you hear about and people being taken on ships and experimented on, that is the Greys and the reptilians doing that, correct?
That's primarily the Nibu, that the Greys, that what MJ-12 signed the agreement behind Eisenhower's back.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed for them to, for their hybrid program, abduct humans, but they took way more than they agreed to. They gave much less technology than the cabal wanted, which was tied in with MJ-12, obviously, with tied in with Alan Dulles and everything. So yeah, but from my understanding, they have been purged out of our solar system, so that now all we have left to do is the human element. See, the human element of the cabal was working with these regressive extraterrestrials, which have incredible capabilities. So now they're left without that assistance. And so now it's up to the people of Earth. They're not going to come in and save us. It's a matter of us awakening, and you doing shows and everybody else doing shows, and educating the public of what we were not taught in school. And to do your own due diligence. My notes are up at thewebmatrix.net. It's not a professional site. It's just things that grabbed my attention, of all these witnesses and all these documents, and you put them all together, it kind of makes a picture kind of clear. And now we have so many secret space program. I just did I think I sent you a link to it. I just did a interview for a secret space program in Silicon Valley conference of businesses looking at incorporating some of these incredible advanced technologies like med beds and stuff into applications. But my understanding is that the new medical technology, once the corrupt medical system is completely dismantled, is going to be at no cost to the public, and that the quantum financial system will replace the monetary system, and also our communication systems will be in like quantum. Even the National Science Foundation is talking about quantum entangled communications where it's secure. There's none of that electromagnetic biological problems, with 5G and brain tumors and all that. With this new communication technology, it'll be a quantum internet that's instantaneous. That because when you have a particle that's entangled on one side, you can be in another galaxy, and whatever changes here at the exact same time. So it can be a way of communicating, and securely too, because you can't tap into it. It's only between the two particles.
So that's, and I hear a lot of people say that too, Dan, that I talk to, that a lot of people are waiting for the extraterrestrials to come and basically save us from ourselves, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, we've got to save ourselves.
That's
and
what I was going to say.
The only way that's going to happen is through awakening and disclosure. And that's the only reason I have zero financial interest in any of this I've done ever since I've testified. All I want to do is help contribute my small part into seeding the awakening of that this reality has been hidden. It's only through deception and secrecy they're able to maintain their power. It's through disclosure that we have the power to reveal these situations and be able to transform it. And I think everybody's kind of fed up with the deceptions and the secrecy and the censorship and all the lies. And there's like a kind of a global sentiment that we've had it with these people. And when we find out that the real truth behind the whole thing, we can take back our planet.
100%. And I agree with you 100%, Dan. I've been telling people that for a long time now, that, and I keep telling people, nobody's going to come and save us. This is a battle that we have to. To me, it's a battle of consciousness and spirituality too. That's our charge to do. We have to do this ourselves. I get so upset when I hear people say like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for them to come and they're going to fix everything." And I keep saying there is work involved. We have our own work to do on ourselves before they ever come down here. Why would they want to come down here and be with us in a big capacity the way we are right now? That's the way I look at it. Like, we have to do some work on ourselves.
It's 100% up to us. We can't wait for somebody else to do it for us. We have to educate ourselves. We have to educate others. We have to speak the truth, be authentic. I see the media is the social media, and they're setting up this ministry of truth. They're wanting to clamp down. They're panicking because there's too much truth coming out, and people are people are starting to see through the deception.
Yep. Yep. And that's scary too if they can pull that even off, because as you know, censorship now is crazy. I mean, I see so many people getting censored and their videos being pulled down for nothing. And it's only going to get worse if we do not start fighting back on this and exposing it. So I mean, I thank you so much, Dan, for the work you do. I really do, because we need, like you said, people out there exposing this and talking truth in that, and that's the way we're going to beat them. So
it's people like you that's making it happen.
Yeah, and you. So I'm gonna let you go, Dan. I know that I'm so thankful for the amount of time that you took. I didn't think we were gonna take this long, actually, but I'm glad that we did go through the timeline. I was really happy that you did that, and I know people are gonna enjoy it, and hopefully it's gonna make them start looking into more things and get them looking into it. I know it did for me. It was amazing. So I just want to thank you, Dan, for all you're doing and taking the time to come and talk to us today.
My absolute pleasure, Rick. Always good to enlighten people to the truth.
For sure. And you're welcome back anytime, Dan.
All right.
Take care, my
Thank
friend.
you, Rick.
I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. As I always say, another amazing interview, and what an amazing guest, Dan Willis. I'm telling you guys, I really enjoy his website, and I enjoy talking to him. As I said at the beginning, I didn't want to talk too much at the intro. I just want to give you a quick intro because I tend to babble a little bit. So I wanted to get right to Dan because I knew that we had this timeline to go through, and it was going to take a while. I didn't think it was going to take that long, and I know he's really busy. So I'm so grateful anytime Dan can stop by and talk with us. And I've done some interview with him on the radio show I do, and then I have him on. There's a video on this channel where we talk about prepping and off-grid living, which I think you guys should check out. It's very interesting and very doable to start living off-grid, and especially it's getting a lot cheaper too. Is something that Dan told me, and when I started looking into it, so I definitely am into the solar and getting off-grid and living that way. I think people have to start getting back to the basics, guys. We got to start getting back to learning how to take care of ourselves and not relying so much on government and, like something as simple as just going to the grocery store and that. People have lost their ability to garden and hunt and all of these things. You think about it honestly, if all of a sudden there was no food in the grocery stores right at this moment and you couldn't get any, like how prepared are you for that? And if you do have some food stashed away in that's going to run out eventually. So how prepared are you? How much do you know about growing and preserving and canning and all of these crazy things, hunting? How many people know all about that? And I just think that we are on such a fragile system that people don't realize, or really, or people are too busy to, or some just, I guess, don't care to stop and think about. But I always do, and think about how fragile the system is, how easily everything can be shut down and the world change in a snap of a finger, and it really makes you wonder. So I just think definitely check out Dan's interview with me on the off-grid living and prepping for beginners and stuff. I think you guys will take a lot out of it now, just to get your mind thinking about it at least, and start looking towards being more self-sufficient. And I think it's very important, and something I definitely do and am trying to do more of. And it was great, though, to have him on here to talk about this. I've been trying to set this interview up for a while now because, like I said, he's very busy. So I'm just happy that he took the time to come and talk to us again. He's always welcome back. I always tell him that, because out of that presentation, I probably could make another 10 interviews out of that just by some of the things he was talking about, like the Nazi connection and how deep they are entrenched in all aspects of our life. It's crazy when you start looking into it, guys, and it's incredible, like that he went in 2001 and testified, with 20 other people there on that panel. There were military and intelligent witnesses in Washington, and they, in front of all that media, and they go and do that presentation. And the fact that they're also, they were exposing ET presence, as I said at the beginning, and they were exposing the illegal secret government operations going on. And then what's frustrating, though, as we were talking about during the interview, is that how much media did that get with such a big announcement? That's huge, guys. think about like what he talked about during the interview that we just did. Go back if you have to, and all the things that they talked about in that interview, in that testimony that they all did, all the different topics he went down the list that they talked about. And then what really got talked about in the mainstream media, like nothing. Like I mean, I didn't hear much about this. I don't know if you guys did, but I didn't. I mean, and that should have been mind-blowing news around the world. That should have been, everybody was talking about that. This is huge. Huge. And I agree with Dan that it's up to people to start talking about this and, trying to get disclosure out there and do the work on it. I keep saying it. You guys know I talk about natural law all the time. I talk about, consciousness and, objective morality, all of those things. And I keep saying that this is the war that we're in right now is got to be solved. It's not going to be solved by voting or bringing someone in to change it. As Dan said, we have to do the work on ourselves. And I've been saying that for a long time now, that this is a spiritual war. It's a consciousness war. And people have to do the work on themselves, and until that happens, don't expect anybody to be coming down in ships or anything else to save us. This is our battle. This is what we're charged with, and until we do it, we're going to keep getting more of what we're getting. And as far as I'm concerned, and I always say it, and some people don't like it, we're getting exactly what we deserve right now. In my opinion, humanity is getting exactly what we deserve as a collective, in the aggregate, from just where we are. So, I mean, why would they want to come down when you think about it? But anyways, guys, that's enough battling right now. I just want to thank you guys for taking the time to come and check out this interview. I want to thank you once again, Dan Willis, for coming and talking with us about this great topic. I'll leave a link for Dan's website definitely for you. It's down in the description, so check it out. Go check out lots of great stuff on there, and you can find that at thewebmatrix.net. But I will leave a link for you guys. And got lots of great other interviews lined up for us. Lots of different guests. We're covering a lot of different topics. So, hit the like, subscribe button. That way you'll know when I post up a video. You'll get a little notification and you can come and watch. And don't forget that I am going to be doing a live show every Saturday now with Cass. It's going to be my co-host. She's from Southern Truth. And we're doing like a 1.5 hour live show that we're going to be doing on Saturdays. That'll be 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're in a different time zone, you'll have to figure it out. But it's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're just going to be talking about a lot of different topics. Basically, we're going to bring a couple topics, each of us, and we're just going to cover them and give our thoughts on them and interact with the chat, see what you guys think. So if you guys want to come hang out in the chat, you got any questions or you want to ask questions about the topics we're covering, that's cool too. But we're going to be covering a lot of great things, talking about what rights are, what natural law is, and everything that envelops that, the occult, all of these great topics. So it's going to be a fun, we did our first show last week. I had a great time. It went really fast. A lot of people said that it was a little too quick because we went about an hour and 10 minutes. So we're going to probably try to go an hour and a half. And it'll be, like I said, Saturdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you guys come and check it out, and I hope you guys enjoy the videos. So, till next time, guys, stay safe and take care of each other. All right, guys? And I'll talk to you soon. Peace, guys.
Are you interested in the paranormal, murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.